Sergio Martinez puts his belts on the line against Miguel Cotto at Madison Square Garden. We're looking ahead here on Making the Rounds. I'm Jim Basquel, joined by ESPN boxing insider Dan Rafael and Sports Nation's Max Kellerman, who will be ringside for the June 7th fight as analyst for HBO Sports. Cotto will fight in New York City for the 11th time and 9th time at Madison Square Garden, attempting to become the first Puerto Rican to win belts in 4 different weight classes. It's an HBO pay-per-view. Max, how does that happen?
How does Cotto win the fight? You know, Cotto has this would be Cotto's best win of his career. He's never beaten an elite fighter except once, Shane Mosley. Otherwise, doesn't have any wins against elite fighters, because usually what separates the elite from just the very, very good is speed, and Cotto lacks elite speed. Although he has very good timing, which can often neutralize speed, and he's used it against some fighters who are fast but maybe not elite, like Zab Judah, for example. He's going to need that timing against Sergio Martinez. He's also going to need to concentrate on his body in the early rounds, and with Freddie Roach training Cotto now, it looks like he's becoming more of that fighter he once was early in his career, really body hunting early in the fight. And I think it's also going to take a little help from Sergio. I think Sergio Martinez physically is diminished. He may be a half step slower. Certainly, he's had enough injuries to diminish him. And if Sergio is not 100% himself, if he's some diminished version of himself and doesn't have the mobility he once had, Cotto has a good shot to win.
Max, I think you're exactly right with that. The big question mark to me in this fight, Max, is how's that knee of Sergio Martinez? He injured it after the in the Chavez fight and had surgery afterwards. He re-injured it when he came back too soon in the fight that he had in Argentina and had another long layoff. And by all accounts, you know, it's not necessarily 100% good enough maybe to get through training camp and get in the ring with Cotto. But if he doesn't have that mobility that he's known for in his big wins, then he might be there in front of Cotto, who may be able to take him apart. Now, Sergio's a much bigger physically than Cotto is, but Miguel Cotto, if he's got a guy right in front of him, he can hang with anybody.
He can, although Cotto then has to worry about Sergio's power, and maybe that's partly based on his speed and mobility. Guys can't see the punches coming from angles, but I've seen Sergio Martinez hurt, drop, and stop so many fighters with shots that when you first see them go, how did that have that effect? But he has that kind of punching power, and so Cotto still has to worry about what's coming back at him, even if Martinez is not mobile.
No question, I think we can both agree Sergio is the favorite for a reason, and they have weight classes for a reason. Miguel's going to be moving up. When I saw them together at the press conference and in the photos and the videos, Martinez is a much bigger man physically than Cotto. But the caveat there is if he's not 100%, and you figure Miguel is going to be as pumped up for this fight as anything, his crowd is going to be there, he's very confident with Freddie, that we could see what I would consider an upset if Miguel is able to win that fight.
You know what's great about this fight when you think about if it was originally made years ago when Martinez was a nobody and Cotto was on top of the world, Cotto would have been a huge favorite. Then if it were made later on when Cotto seemed to slip and suffer the aftermath of that Margarito loss, where Margarito likely cheated Cotto out of a career for some time with the loaded wraps, as everyone thinks his wraps were loaded, of course, in their first fight. Cotto seemed so diminished, and Martinez seemed on top of the world. It seemed like a mismatch in Martinez's favor at that point. And now maybe they're meeting at a time in their careers which is actually perfect in terms of producing the kind of competitive, evenly matched fight that we'd like to see.
And that is why I am so pumped up for this fight. I've been excited for this ever since it was even, proposed, when there was the thought maybe Cotto's going to fight Canelo Alvarez instead. The other option was to fight Martinez. I was rooting for the Martinez fight. I figure the Canelo fight will always be there for him in a couple of fights from now. This is a historically significant fight between 2 future Hall of Fame fighters in a great arena like Madison Square Garden. Honestly, it doesn't get bigger than this for me.
The 39-year-old Martinez has risen from the canvas in each of his last 3 fights. How does he avoid that trend continuing against Cotto? Let's start with you, Dan.
Well, Jim, I don't know if he does continue that, but I would say the fact that he got knocked down in those fights and got up to win, maybe he needs to get dropped to get up and win, and it's been a good sign for him, possibly.
Yeah, I would say that he's getting dropped by big, strong middleweights, and that's not what Cotto is, and that's one of the reasons for this fight. Martinez, getting older, obviously, physically probably past his prime, suffering a lot of injuries, and at this point, maybe not looking for the biggest, strongest middleweight he can find. You know, he has a guy moving up in weight. I would say Cotto's best shot to score a knockdown or knockout is to the body. Cotto, with his left hook to the body, you know, it was once considered maybe the most debilitating blow in boxing. Cotto's left hook to the body, gotten away from that in recent years. Freddie Roach seems as though he's gotten Cotto back to it, and I think that's Cotto's best shot to score a knockdown.
Sergio Martinez, Miguel Cotto. It's an HBO pay-per-view from Madison Square Garden on June 7th. For Dan Rafael and Max Kellerman, I'm Jim Baswell. We're making the rounds only on the boxing page of ESPN.com.